We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense. And how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity so you can safely use any technology. Okta, the world's identity company.
The IKEA Business Network is now open for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Take your small business to the next level when you sign up for IKEA Business Network for free today at IKEA.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm Diana Ransom, Inc. Executive Editor and co-host of From the Ground Up. As we continue to work on the new season, to hold you over, I'm excited to introduce some most excellent summer programming. Here we have a fireside chat between our editor-in-chief, Mike Hofman, and Todd Carmichael at Inc.'s Founders House in Philadelphia. Carmichael is the co-founder and CEO of La Colombe, which was fully acquired by Chobani for $900 million in December of 2023. Thanks for tuning into the episode.
Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Good. So this is our grand finale of the day, and we're really excited. We're also mindful that we're all that stands between you and the Inc. 5000 cocktail happy hour. So we will keep this really snappy, but I think we've got a really great program for the next 30 or so minutes. So we're excited. Todd Carmichael is the founder and CEO of Rebel Beverage Labs and the founder of La Colombe. And La Colombe recently sold for how much money?
$900 million.
So I want everybody to take a minute and think about what they would do with the $900 million. Yeah, no, it's big. It's a big boat, right? Or something like that. One thing I thought was interesting, Todd and I were talking, before this, and I think for most people, for me certainly, selling a business for $900 million would feel like this really amazing, milestone accomplishment, and certainly it is. But you said that you had sort of a variety of feelings when that happened. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. How can I say it? I had two similar feelings in the past. One was when I'd walked across Antarctica and finally touched the South Pole and set this world record, there was a moment of elation. I was really happy to do it. It was 4 or 5 years' work. But after a couple of days, this kind of black cloud kind of came over me. I'm getting emotional thinking about it. Because ultimately, you kill your dream. You live with this dream for a long, long time. And when you accomplish your goals, you don't anticipate that there is a downside, and that downside becomes your dreams have been murdered. I had this dog, his name was Ishmael, and he had a dream, and that was to catch the squirrel in the back of the yard, right? So for years, he would chase the squirrel. It was just his, it was his life, the squirrel. And one day he caught it, and the dog changed for weeks because he had kind of achieved his goal too. There was that moment of elation, but then you realize something's missing now. And, all of us as founders, we pour our heart into what we do. And it becomes such a big part of who we are. It almost like embeds itself in our DNA. And it's the reason you get up. It's the reason why, it's the reason why you do everything. And in one moment, even though there's a great big celebration, they tell you you've just, broke the world record, or, your dog gets the squirrel, or whatever it may be. There's this downside that comes with it. And we don't talk about it as founders, but for me, it was really profound. I'd lost something very, very dear to me, and that was the ambition to drive at something. And you don't have the bit in your mouth anymore, and you kind of wander. So it takes you a period of time to adjust, to kind of get used to a new life without all that frickin' adrenaline and anxiety and problem causing. So during our conversation, we kind of landed on that pretty quickly because it was something that was very surprising to me. I thought it was just going to be all rainbows and symphonies and, just no more stress. But there is another level of kind of feeling that you get that isn't positive. It just isn't. So my advice is make sure you're ready. Make sure you've gone to the very end of your road so there's no more regrets, right? Or you don't think back, God, I could could have gone 2 or 3 more years, So that's out there.
Was there ever a moment you thought about walking away from the deal when it was still happening?
Yeah, I'm notorious for that. Yeah, I flip-flop. Yeah. We'd had an offer much higher than that, actually. And it had that B around it, right? But I was looking for the right pair of shoulders to put on it.
That B.
That one, right? Yeah. And, but realistically, hadn't it been for COVID, I would still be wearing the CEO badge. But the company clearly needed to have a bigger set of shoulders, financial shoulders, because, it's a 4-channel business and three of them went dark. And you got 1,400 people in that airplane with you, and you're the pilot, and you got one engine. Let me tell you, it's harrowing. And I knew that the city life was going to change. I knew that we were all going to have this kind of long-term COVID, and we're still kind of in it right now. And you needed some real financing behind it, and I didn't have that. So it was better for the company, I felt, and it was, at that time, because of family things too, it was better for me. That the final flip wasn't a flop. I finally signed. Yeah.
Now, thinking about going from 0 to 1 to 1,400, right? There's so many different phases to growth there. What were the scariest phases for you as a founder? What were the most satisfying in retrospect, where you thought that was really interesting, that was a rewarding time?
Well, I mean, you got to go back to point 0, So I arrived in Philadelphia with 2 suitcases and an envelope with some traveler's checks and an idea. Right? When we pushed the door open on the first cafe, which was at 19th and Walnut, we had $200 left in the bank account, and we took it out and put it in the register. We were at 0. Between that moment and the very last moment, I think I bet the bank at least a dozen times, at least, where you're staring at the plaster and you're concerned. I mean, it was, I think 3 or 4 times short of, paying, making salary. I mean, I think we all kind of go through this. Just that white noise of really trying to make big moves, and they tended to pay out. I remember one particular one which got, so coffee is a 4-channel business, right? So you have B2B, it's a big one. La Colombe does about 15,000 different restaurants, hotels, cafes, casinos across the country. You have DTC, which started out direct-to-customer e-com, which started out as mail order, by the way. That's how old I am. And then you have brick-and-mortar retail, and then finally CPG, right? The big golden nugget, CPG, right? And in order for me to get to CPG, I needed a product that was different than just coffee in a bag, because coffee in a bag on a shelf, it's old, it's really hard to leverage. It works in places like Whole Foods, but the big, big commercial, the big kind of platforms, it really wouldn't work. So there were a couple of us who started in 2008 doing cold brew. And it was me, Dwayne, and Doug, right? Dwayne, Stumptown, Doug, Stumptown, Dwayne, Stumptown, and then Doug was Intelligentsia and me. But I was the first guy to put it in a bottle and sell it. At the same time, I needed to raise some money, and I went to the VC crowd, and I was green as shit in this environment, right? So I just met with everyone, finally did a deal. They promised me they would follow me anywhere, and I did it because I wanted to get rid of the leverage, and I wanted to really kind of stack the deck on creating the draft latte, the cold brew, and all that. First board meeting, they said they weren't going to do it.
And how many stores do you have at this point?
Well, I opened my second store 12 years after opening the first. And I was waiting for Starbucks to feel like Target. And when it started feeling like Target, it was our turn to come in and show people kind of what cafes could mean, right? Ones that reflected the community in terms of their architecture and their mixture of people and the rest of it. So at that time, we might have had, I think I ended up with 60 or 70. That time we had maybe 3 or 4 in New York and then 3 or 4 here. And we were moving hard towards building more, but I could really see that 4th channel popping. And they told me they weren't going to do it, and they had control of the finances. So on their first board meeting, I said something that sounded pretty ridiculous to them, and it sounded ridiculous to me too, but I said, okay, I'm going to buy you out 2 times what you just gave me 3 weeks ago. The only problem is I didn't have any money. Right? It was and I needed to hurry up and get a hold of $70 million. And, yeah, that worked out though. I found him, found the guy, did the right thing, and brought him in. And that's Hamdi Ulukaya, who is the owner of Chobani. Right.
When you have that conversation and you're like, listen, I just took money. Turns out maybe it was a mistake. Will you finance me to buy them out at 2x? Like that's a bold and tricky conversation to manage.
Yeah.
How'd you do it?
Well, I decided I thought about who it would be, right? And I'd heard an interview on NPR there was a man named Hamdi Ulukaya, and I heard his story, and he sounded like the sort of craft-based guy that I could really relate to, and he crushed CPG, so he could speak that language. I mean, this guy, he looked like a .com. I mean, he introduced Greek yogurt to America and took over half the market in like 2 years. I was like, oh, you know when you're doing those calculations, like, if I can only get 1% of the market, this guy took 50. Like, I was just like crazy. And I heard he was doing a lecture in Istanbul. So I went to Istanbul and I found him.
And so this was like a cold trip to Istanbul.
Yep. And I invited him to lunch, and we spent literally a week together traveling Turkey. And by the end of it, we'd villainized all VCs to the point where I said, wouldn't it be great to just take over these motherfuckers? And he said, yeah, let's do it, man. Let's do it. And we did it. And, you know, cold brew and La Colombe's canned products exploded. So I guess this is kind of also a lesson is like, you know, we're all founders here. You're going to make hundreds of thousands of decisions in your career as a founder. And they're not all going to be the best ones. But the ones that you got wrong, often, if you leverage it right and you get really aggressive with it, you'll find that you end up on higher ground. And I ended up in a way better position post that situation than I was had I stayed and caved or even prior. And that meant I could buy a major factory in Michigan. I could access all the best milk in the world. And it made the company, well, let's go back. So this VC, what they wanted to do is just build tons of cafes. But like those numbers that are really irritating to hear, let's just build 1 million cafes. You know, it's like, fuck, you have any idea? It's like, making a really good La Colombe cafe is like having a baby. You know, I'm saying, like you can only do one every 9 months when you're pressed. You know, I'm just like, so you're not going to make 1 million of these things our way, right? If you look at the value today of what cafes are, anybody want a cafe in here? They're free. They're not worth anything right now. There's zero. Your value of your company is toast. There's a company in New York that's the first name of a man and it's 3 letters. And you can have it. Now, I would say that the CPG products that we created tacked on $650 million to $700 million in valuation. So what was the best choice? The best choice was the 4th channel. It was just very clear, you know, that coffee needed to be more mobile.
Yeah, you mentioned Starbucks earlier. You were building this company, obviously not in a vacuum. No one ever is, but you had one of the, you know, arguably the great growth company competitors of the last 50 years that was in at least a part of your category. Was that something that you pushed against? Is that something you rallied the team against? Is that something that you were like, this is great, let them zig and we'll zag? How did you think about them?
Well, I thought they were the biggest opportunity out there. I mean, you know, first, you know, let's get real. I mean, I started working at this company in Seattle in 1982. They had 3 cafes and a little roastery, and I was hired to initially just drag bags around, and it was called Starbucks, and it was really cool, man. It was like, we were so Doobie Brothers, and it was so not what it is today, right? I mean, it was Portland before Portland, right? And it was just who we were, you know. It was kind of that grunge meets craft kind of crowd, you know. And I loved it because I understood all the aspects of it. And then when Howard bought it, he had a chain of cafes in Seattle that failed, so he bought Starbucks from the original owners. And I was offered a small check, and it was huge to me at the time, right? Because I was 20 years old, and I could see, because he was talking IPO, that, you know, what was going to happen. This was going to be a wave from the west to the east. And it's going to take that dude a while to get to the east. So I need to be east first. And plus, he's so hyper-focused on one channel. the brick and mortar piece that he's leaving me the other 3. So when I got to Philly, I built a cafe so I could have some street presence, but I didn't build it anymore. I focused on the culinary aspect of coffee. I sold to the top 200 restaurants in America, Jean-Georges, the Le Bec Fin, the Four Seasons. I focused on the highest I could in that B2B. And then over time, it was just thousands and thousands of them. And then as soon as I realized that their arc, in terms of their personality and their experience, was kind of going down, or was really getting into pump, and coffees turned to desserts, and they kind of do when you're only doing math, that it was my time to shine. And then I added the other 2. So for me, Starbucks made folks aware that there was something other than commoditized coffee available. It was out there. They knew it. And so the awareness helped me enormously. So I never villainized the guy. Why do that? He's the one that's kind of paving the road. He was blocking and I was running.
That's interesting.
But I did make fun of him a lot on my TV show.
Well, let me ask you, you've mentioned craft a couple of times, and I think this has something to do with your upbringing, right? How did you sort of get a sense for how to build something that was so high quality and do it, with coffee beans?
Well, you got to remember, coffee is an agricultural good, and I'm a farm kid. And,
Where from?
Just north of Spokane, Washington. So Spokane was the big city. And, what we knew at that time is that if anyone took the time to bring a truck up to the farm, you're going to get the greatest shit. We're going to hook you up, and that's just, I think it's embedded in every farmer. And,
what did your farm grow?
We grew from, low fruit, like strawberries, all the way up to Bing cherry. So it's like the seasons follow low to high. And we, our seasons were 9.5 months, all the way to like peach apples. But if you came, we would take care of you. So I had this philosophy in my mind that if we went to the coffee farms and we went and we worked with them, we could cut out all that bullshit between all the traders. You could afford to pay the farmer more. He's excited and he's going to give you the best stuff. And then you make a commitment for the next year and you give him recommendations for even making a better product. You're now creating not only the greatest product you can, but your life has meaning. It's like you really impact the lives of people, and people like me, people, just farm kids with not a lot of future. Right. So, the premise of the company was that, and I was really married to that idea at a very young age because I lived it, and I just took that into the business environment.
And so where did you go? Like, where did you start to source beans?
Oh, shit. Oh my God. The first ones. Now this was pre-internet, so, oh my God, it was, first ever, I'm not going to include the easies, right? Which is kind of Central South, like Panama is easy. You can check into a hotel and watch cable TV and buy coffee, But my specialty was Africa.
I don't know that actually, but I like that you described it that way. But your specialty was Africa. Got it.
You got to do, Burundi, Uganda, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Kenya. It's just Eastern Africa is like, that's it, man. That is it. And you get a truck and you drive the roads and you meet people and you eat and you get to know people and you find the best shit on the planet. You just do. When I came to Philadelphia and we looked around, like even at the Bec Fin, which was the #1 restaurant in the country at the time, they were buying coffee at $2.50 a pound, like $2.50 a pound roasted, with machines, service, everything, $2.50. But you should have seen it. It looked like whole bean form. It looked like rotten back teeth. It was like floor sweeping. It was the shitty, and it was such an easy sell that when the Perrier said to me, like, how much is this a pound? I said, well, you're paying $2.50. This is $7.50. I went $7.50. I went hard because it's worth it. First, the pain we went to get it, but I could tell a story behind it. I could explain to them, right, everything from the fertilization all the way through, the altitude, which didn't exist. It just didn't exist. And then you compared it visually and say, this is a spice. Which one is better tasting? And he picked up the grinder that he had from a company I won't name and just dumped it in the trash and said, well, give me some more. And we were serving it that night.
Yeah. It's interesting. So you spend a lot of time with suppliers and far-flung suppliers.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time with obviously customers and
Yeah.
the chefs and fancy restaurants that were the original core of the business. How do you balance those tasks, which are so important and were so strategic for you, with spending time with your team and building the culture? It's so easy to focus inside.
Well, that's why. So La Colombe was born. There were two parents. There was me and my best friend ever, and brother, and beyond best friend. Like part of me, like he's the left brain, I'm the right brain. Is Jean-Philippe. He's like this guy. I mean, he would cover. We always say if we were dogs, I'm the one that would get off the porch and get in the neighbor's trash and run around the block. I'm that guy, and he guards the front door like that. He's very zen and relaxed. I've taken him into Origin a couple times, only one hard, dangerous one, which was Haiti right after the earthquake and when all the gangs were going nuts. And the rest, he was Brazil. Brazil's easy. I mean, that's a great one. I mean, you get cocktails. He ended up like marrying a Brazilian girl. And like, I got it. Meanwhile, I'm getting malaria, But we were a tag team, and it's having that. This was another piece of advice that everyone gave me when I started the company. Because I brought the financing to the company, I brought the business plan, I brought the concepts, but I wasn't going to do it without them because I knew that this required like two parents. If you're going to raise this child, it needs two parents. It's just too complex. And yeah, we did 30 years together. And we have lunch about 3 times a week still. I call him every day, and he just golfs way more than I would ever golf. I've never golfed, and I never want to. But yeah, so he's kind of in that different phase of his life now. But
apart from being different people and having different skills, what's the secret to a 30-plus year partnership?
We all want the best of both. Dessert without calories, luxury without expense. And how about security without passwords? With Okta, it's possible. We secure identity for your business so you can safely use any technology. You can build experiences that are richer and more secure, grow revenue without running up costs, and scale easily no matter your tech stack. Enjoying the best of both? It's possible. It's Okta. Okta, the world's identity company.
The IKEA Business Network is now open for small businesses and entrepreneurs. Join for free today to get access to interior design services to help you make the most of your workspace, and employee well-being benefits that will help you and your people grow, as well as amazing discounts on travel, insurance, IKEA purchases, deliveries, and more. Take your small business to the next level when you sign up for the IKEA Business Network for free today at IKEA.com.
You always have to value the partnership above everything else. Even our brand, if you look at our brand book, it starts with, our brand is Founders Forward, which has meant our founders matter. And we matter. He matters, I matter. We never take credit. Well, I was the one that fucked this, or you did that, or never. We, always we. I don't ever use in the workplace or anywhere else. We had 3 arguments. One was about training dogs. The other one was about squash, right? Because I kept breaking rackets and I actually gave it up. And the third one, I don't even remember, but it was probably over tuna sandwiches. It was always these really stupid, and they lasted 20 minutes. And when we had them, I didn't feel good. And I don't like feeling that way. So I just never pursued it. And so we always made sure that we were in love. That's what it is. I really, truly love that man. And I also admire him because he possesses skills that I just don't. He is Buddha, and I'm not. I am high anxiety, dude. I'm and he's, he's incense, and I'm I need another IV bag, It's
Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
Tell us about your new company, Rebel Beverage Labs.
Yeah, I guess it kind of harkens back. I'm going to be honest because we're all founders, right? So it reminds me. So when I left Antarctica, right? So I'd gone in at 225 pounds. I came back at 160, and I was, They wanted to cut my toes off, my fingers off. I'd burn my lungs. I couldn't breathe. It was just, I was in a bad way. And they put me on a cargo plane. I was cargo, right? I was with these oil drums. It was dark. You couldn't see anything. It's colder than shit. You never get in a cargo plane, right? It's cold, right? And I was suffering from malnutrition and sleep deprivation. And all I wanted to do was think of the next thing I could do because I needed to replace it. By the time I landed, I'd figured out I was going to walk across Death Valley, right? I needed to replace it. It's not always a wise thing to do because sometimes it's good just to let things lie for a while. Like say you're in a relationship for a long time and it ends, you just don't go a minute later and go, who do I date now? Because it's not going to work out, right? Anyway. So I wanted to make sure I didn't do something like that. So I asked myself, what am I really interested in when it comes to beverages, just strictly beverages? I mean, coffee has all this stuff that's so amazing I love doing, but just beverages. And me, I'm interested in mouthfeel. When I was in Seattle in the early days, we didn't foam milk yet. We didn't do cappuccinos or lattes. It was cafe au lait. That's what we did. And then when we figured out how to foam milk, frickin' lines went down the block, right? It was the same ingredients. It was still just milk and coffee, right? But it was just that mouthfeel freaked people out. And I realized really a big part of the cafe experience is that. It's that feeling that you get in your mouth. And so are sodas and so are these things. And, wines, you hear about mouthfeel, you have whiskeys and different bourbons, et cetera, that have different mouthfeels. So I've been focusing primarily on mouthfeels. And one thing that I wanted to figure out is why is it that we only use carbon when we're creating effervescence? It doesn't make sense because carbon is salty, it's acid, it's all the shit you really don't want in your beverage. I mean, so you have to put tons of more sugar in there to counteract all the salt. And so I started experimenting with different gases. And it turns out that the reason why you can't use other gases is because the technology has never been invented. So I invented it. And it's called shimmering. So I can create effervescence with hydrogen, nitrous oxide, with anything. And you find out that the gases directly impact flavor to like a massive degree. Like it's just huge what it does, right? So that's what I've been working on with Rebel Beverage Labs, which now has put me in this weird position where I'm negotiating with Coca-Cola and places like that to take the technology, because what I can do now by blending gases, I can take and make a soda that tastes hyper sweet with no sugar, no sweeteners. It's just the bubble that makes it sweet. It's just the gas.
Is this a bigger opportunity in La Colombe?
It could be. It could be, but I only work at it about 3 hours a day, right? It's like, no, realistically, right now, the biggest work is I'm looking for a partner, and I'm interviewing people. And I know it's really weird to say, hey, would you like to own half a company? It's like, but it's, what you're looking for is that person that can really carry it. Because where I'd like to spend my time is in the lab. It's then on the floor. So I have a factory, and we're creating different things in the lab, and I could launch a product tomorrow. Right. But just I haven't got to that point where I feel like, you build a C-suite. I'm looking for that founder suite, actually. Right? And there's about 4 or 5 people I'm talking to right now.
Wow, that sounds exciting. Time for questions. A couple of questions right there.
I am a local artist, and I'm actually matchmaking with investors right now. Mm-hmm. So I'm always looking for places and spaces where I can be to even just get scrappy with like a 1,500 plus. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, being local, what do you recommend? How do you recommend I go and get to places and be seen?
Wow. See, I'm probably the worst guy to ask that. And I'll tell you why. Because so in 94, when we started, I couldn't even get a line of credit for 15 years. And no one wanted it because we were in a .com and we were coffee, and it's just gonna go away tomorrow. And are you guys really gonna do it? And at the same time, I was skateboarding to work, so I wasn't carrying a lot of it wasn't until things got like significant and where people were really talking and, the brand was really screaming that I could get anyone's attention. It's really hard when you're starting out, is that that very early startup phase to find anyone. And then you have to be cautious. Angels aren't angels, man. I don't know why we call them angels. They're angels for the honeymoon, but it doesn't last long. Then they're screaming at you for not emptying the dishwasher, right? I mean, it's like, so in that phase, what we did is, so I lived as cheaply as I could. Back then, the projects were at 13th and Lombard. So I went to them and I looked around, and there was a studio apartment, and I had a half fridge and a cooktop on it for rent for $275. And then I had a skateboard, and that's how I lived. I ate shit out of a can, and the croissants you guys didn't buy at the end of the night, that was dinner. And I decided that I wasn't gonna pay myself. I went the old starving artist path, right? I don't live like that anymore, but that was just part of it. I'm an endurance guy. I love expeditions, and I kind of treated it like that. Problem is, nowadays, with all the influence we have from the world around us, it seems like everyone's living the billionaire lifestyle, right? That we think that we have to. You don't have to. You really don't. Because this time will burn past. You want to be able to tell the story about how you sacrificed for her or him, or whatever, I call my company her, but that you sacrificed for that, right? And it will give you a deeper sense of, value if you do sacrifice, actually. Get rid of the car. I didn't have a car. I didn't even have a driver's license, because I'd spent so much time in Africa. But
when you think about doing things sort of within the community, how do you think about when and how to give back?
Well, I think it should be natural, First of all, okay, I hope I'm going over time. First of all, your business is not a machine. If you look at it as a machine, you're probably going to fail, because it's not a machine. It's an organism. It's a living thing. That's why we use the word entity, right? And so it has a personality. We use the word brand, but it has a personality, it has a culture. And the thing is, it has to have a brain, which is partially you, mostly you, and your managers and the rest of it. It has to have a soul, but it has to have a conscience. And it has to care. And it has to be involved. And it has to live these things. So you have to live it. If you're saying, well, I want to give back. Okay, that's great. Give back, write a check. Or do you want to be an entity? Do you want to be alive? Do you want to interact with the folks around you? And you get to sometimes interact with people that maybe in the White House, or you interact with the people in your neighborhood. And when you interact with people in your neighborhood, like my grandfather, he came here from Scotland. He would help people mow their lawn and shovel their walk and do things like that. He taught me that. And that's all we ever did. So when things come up, and often I listen to the people around me, like, the baristas or a younger group, they have different ideas. They have a different look at the world. They have different things they want to do. I try to tap into that because I want them to get up in the morning for more reasons than just paycheck. I want them to get up in the morning with the idea that, shit, this is cool. We're actually making a difference. We're engaged. And, you find, especially post-COVID, I think our youth right now really need us more than ever for that. They're lost, guys. They're lost. They just blew 2 years of their life. They have so much shit on their shoulders. Try to have them work through you into the spaces around them. Start doing things that matter to them. You're going to get loyalty. Like the turnover at La Colombe was like 2%. And that was because they graduated finally, or they got their band got signed a contract or something. It's like, but it was small in the barista area, right? For youth. Now it's what? New staff every 6 months in Starbucks? Why? Because they don't feel like you're doing enough for them. And that they're not talking about union wages. They're talking about their life has to have meaning. And you can help them have that meaning. And so I always look for that. I just look for that.
It's a really profound thought. Thank you so much. Todd Carmichael, the founder and CEO of Rebel Beverage Labs and the founder of La Colombe. Thank you so much.
The new season of From the Ground Up will premiere in September, so stay tuned. Subscribe to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.